and begin this city council meeting for March 8th, 2016. If we can begin with a roll call. Madam Secretary?
Bielisich,
Present.
Cervantes Alejo,
Here.
Cubman Gomez, Dutra,
Present.
Garcia, Hurst,
Here.
Hernandez.
Here. Next, if everybody can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Quick note, we do have translation equipment over on the left. Tenemos equipaje para traducir aquí. Para usar los aparatos de traducir en español, obtenga un aparato de la mesa junto de la caseta de traducir, préndelo y usa el canal 0, cuélgaselo en el cuello con el frente hacia afuera. Si no puede oír, revise el aparato que esté encendido, si no, sin obstrucciones. Solo funciona dentro de la Cámara del Concilio. Regrese el aparato después de la junta. Gracias. Next, we have number 3, information items, which I believe we have none. Next is presentations and oral communication. This is the time that's set aside for members of the general public to address the council on any items not on the council agenda.
Greetings, Mayor Hernandez and staff. My name is Patrick Orozco. I'm the tribal chairman of Pajaro Valley Alone Indian Council in the county of Santa Cruz. I attended a meeting, I think it was March 1st, with the planning department, and I brought this matter up, but it was just passed on to you. You'll probably be hearing it in a few weeks. I don't know when your next council meeting is. But my name, I'm concerned about the project called La Quintana Inn. I had a document that I presented on March 1st, telling me they did some kind of soil sampling there. They dug down so deep and they found an Indian artifact. And I was told that the people that were working there were told to keep quiet, not to reveal the information. But I did get a copy of the report, and it says Indian relic, and that's why I'm here. Greg Caput came to my home a while back, and he brought this to my attention. And one of the persons that actually did was part of the crew that was doing the digging, and this is what they told me. We have a law that was just passed about maybe 2 or 3 years ago by Luis Alejo. He presented it, as far as I know. I think it's AB 52 or SB 52, saying that you're supposed to call any local Native American that resides in this area. I did register in 1976 with the Native American Heritage Commission in Sacramento. And that bill that was presented in AB 52 says you have to contact Native Americans when any of these projects come up. Now, I know that this project here, maybe they didn't know about it because that Quintana Inn, prior to that, it was National Motel 9. And before that, I believe it was Cinderella Motel. And prior to that, I think it was a nursery. Now, we didn't have no laws in those days. These laws were introduced into legislation after 1975. And a lot of these laws that exist now, we didn't have. The only law we had to protect our Indian burial sites was, I forget what it was, but it was to describe what describes a cemetery, 6 or more burials, health and safety laws, what it is. That's all we had. Now we've got these laws that exist today. But it seems that this law AB 52 is not being honored. because there's a lot of development going on, and I don't even know nothing about it. For instance, well, there's a big old project going on over there on Green Valley Road, not far from the Corliss Creek. Now, anytime you build next to a creek, there's a good chance you're going to find an Indian village. My time's up?
Yeah, if you could wrap it up.
Okay, so I went out to that property, Quintana Inn, and I walked into the property, and first thing I saw right in the driveway, Indian midden. Indian midden signified that the Indian occupied that area. So that's why I brought this to your attention. I'm not against development, you know. I like to work with the city council and the developer in regards to that. A lot of the people in the area are against it, you know, because of road hazards and all that stuff, you know. But my concern is to avoid impact to the resting places of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could leave your contact information there with some of the folks from planning too.
Yes, I have a letter here that was sent to me by the Heritage Commission, and I'm going to give it to her. So it's got her phone number in case you want to contact the Heritage Commission.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will bring it back for public comment for city council. Councilmember Jucha?
Thank you. I just want to announce a couple things. While I was, the past couple of weeks, I attended the Crab Feed at the Fairgrounds Foundation. There were 500 plus people. It was a great event. All the money that was raised goes towards the operations of the fairgrounds. So it was good to see so much community involvement with that project. So it was a great Saturday evening. I also modeled for Family Services at their Daisy Gala fashion show on Saturday. So that was a fun event as well. Packed the Paradox Hotel, and they raised a lot of money for Family Services. I also attended the Pearl Valley Pride fundraiser that was held locally at one of the homes of one of the directors for the Pearl Valley Pride. It was a great event, and the organization is raising money for Pride, which is in August. Some things that are coming up, March 22nd, we're having our mural project at PAL. It will begin at 9 a.m. It'll be all day, so please come on out and help. We're going to be putting a huge mural on the fence near the garden boxes that we have put in so graciously from Home Depot and PG&E. And yesterday we started distributing those boxes to the residents. They're very excited, and we're looking forward to this getting off the ground. I'm also starting a new project in my district at Struve Slough with Monterey Bay Murals with Jaime Sanchez, Paul D., and Priscilla Martinez. We're going to be working with the Wetlands Watch and doing a nice big mural right off of Struve Slough. There's this great wall. So we've cleaned it up. We've removed so much debris and trees. Really had an issue with homelessness, with the drug use that was going in there, and it's made it a safer place for people to go in there and to exercise and walk around without having to feel that they have somebody feeling unsafe. I wanted to take this time also to talk. I know there was a letter that was put in the newspaper a few days ago in regard to the situation that's going on at Crossroads Shopping Center. This shopping center is in my district, and I was quite offended because it's in my district, and the letter went out from the mayor and the vice mayor, and they excluded 4 of the members here on the council. And, you know, with situations like this, these are the times that we have to unite in order to make, you know, progress in our community, especially when, you know, people are left up in the air. So I just hope that in the future, that when opportunities come up that we should be united, that the council stays united and not move into their own personal agendas. You know, this affected a lot of people, and we need to be a little bit more cognizant of what the perception is from the city, from the residents, and we need to be working a little bit better together to be able to solve problems and not be so divisive. When people approach me with issues in other districts, you know, I tell them you need to go to your council member. and you need to approach them to fix the issue. So when someone comes into someone else's district and doesn't even ask them to be a participant, even though I was out there multiple days, I spoke to the realtors, the landlords, the tenants, Kaiser. It really shows a divide, and it really shows the community that this council is divided. Now, we can move forward from here, and we can start working together, or we can continue being divided. So I encourage my fellow colleagues to work together. And I hope that we can, from here, move forward, that we can work together with issues like this. Thank you.
Any other members of the council? Councilmember Bilicich.
I wanted to say that I attended the Zone 7 Flood Finance Committee meeting, and there was a large group of people there to represent various aspects of the community. And I think we have a challenge ahead of us as to what is going, although we may end up with, well, we will end up with federal dollars to help enhance the levee and the 100-year floodplain, we're also going to have to figure out what our community is going to do in regard to funding that levee. And there will be some recommendations coming out of that group. And I think we just have to wait and see what comes up with that group, because we're almost there. Well, I mean, we still have more time. And I know people have said that it's never going to be repaired in my lifetime, but don't give up. We're still there. It looks like we're going to get federal money, and we just have to figure out our portion and how we're going to fund it. So that's another project for Zone 7, is the enhancement of the levee. And if the levee gets to be the 100 years, then the flood insurance is going to be greatly diminished. Also, there was a chamber luncheon on February 25th and it had many businesses there. It was a good event. And then, again, the Santa Cruz County Fair had their crab dinner. Again, another nice event. A lot of people, a lot of support for the fairgrounds. And it's great to see so many people there. And then, too, I think that we were all upset about the loss of the businesses at Crossroads Shopping Center. And a lot has been happening with Kaiser. I think many of us worked with Kaiser, talked with Kaiser. And from what I gather, I think every council member seemed to be very upset about the whole incident and how it transpired. But it was disappointing and disheartening to read the article in the newspaper that only included 3 members, when I think that had we talked, we would have been united behind that, and everybody would have had the same opinion. So I think it could have been a unifying experience. And it didn't appear that way. But hopefully, I think we will continue to work forward and go forward. And I think that concludes my remarks at this point. Thank you.
Are we having technical difficulties with the monitors?
Yes, Mayor, Council. At this point in time, the cable system is down, so the viewers out there that have charter can get it, but we can't get it in here right now. So, my apologies.
Guess we didn't pay the charter bill, huh?
No.
Yeah, it says pay the. Any other council members? Council member? Councilmember Trina Gomez.
Thank you. Again, Crossroads, we are at the Crossroads right now. As many of our council members have commented, I too would like to voice what I have heard and learned from the owners and management at several of the small businesses that have been directly impacted from the eviction decision reached by the property owner and manager. I understand that this is a financial decision the investors you have made to not continue the lease agreements for these small businesses. And I emphasize small businesses because I too am a small business owner in this community and certainly would not appreciate my landlord of more than a decade to treat my lease termination as poorly as what has been done for these tenants. The impact of the non-renewal decision reaches beyond just the keys to the front door and pride of ownership for the entrepreneur that made conscious decision to plant their roots in our community with a special product to offer the Watsonville residents. These are not box stores that pop up like franchises, but are small, viable businesses our community has grown to rely on. They are store owners that are generous to our community and to our local charities. They are businesses that have a solid reputation and have been a thread in our business community. I do hope that the property management works closely with the tenants in good faith conscious effort and in writing to assure them of your assistance during this time of their transition. To the store owners, I truly apologize for what displacement this has caused you. From personally speaking to several of you, I hope there is some way you can think to change your mind about closing down completely and have the ability to find a place in Watsonville, to relocate a cooperative landlord willing to work with you and remain a fabric of our community. My response to Kaiser is to welcome through the transitory process. Obviously, it came as a shock to them on the process that happened here. There is no better expectation than to come from this by making the right impression for a new business coming into Watsonville, than to show to all of us you're going to become an integral part of this community, invest in Watsonville, employ our local residents for the job creation we really need here in this community. So I'm hoping that that message is clear to everybody that's been involved in the crossroads. On top of that, there is the next announcement not related to Crossroads. We have a local agency formation commission. What this is called is LAFCO. And what LAFCO is asking for are a couple members from our community to apply to represent our community for some of these long-term development projects, such as the Manabi Owl project, which took nearly 10 years or so. This is one of the agencies that we must overcome the hurdle, and we really need to have community members willing to participate on this committee. And the applications are here with our office. I think they're due fairly shortly, and the first meeting will be held in May. So I'm really encouraging those in the public that really want to have a long-term vested interest in what city's going to do to get involved, and that's one way of doing so. In future events, we've got the casino night coming up on the 19th of March. It's at the fairgrounds. There's a Bay Area Council for another fundraiser that's happening on the 30th of March, and this will go to the local Boy Scout Council here, and also to some of our local youth that are at the migrant camps and other scholarships for the Boy Scouts in our community. And any information on that people are interested, they could reach me about it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just a couple of quick announcements. Those of you who follow the Farm Bureau will see that we have a new ag commissioner in town. He's not exactly new. He's been here for a while, but he's just getting some recognition. Juan Hidalgo. And the ag commissioner supervises all the pesticide regulations and kind of all the ag interfacing and weights and measures. And you see those little stickers on the gas pump. They check that for accuracy, and they do a scale review in grocery stores and everything else. And so the ag commissioner, he has a lot to say in the community and how ag interfaces and weights and measures with the public. Also in the news today, you'll see that a public defender, Larry Bigham, 40 years as a public defender. That's quite a record for a public defender in this community and any community. You know, the public defenders aren't always popular. You know, they have to take on a lot of tough public cases with public monies that nobody really likes a lot. And he's done a great job in bridging that gap with the public. You'll also see in the newspaper that State Assembly Speaker Anthony Reardon has been selected, and he's a friend of Watsonville in many respects, and I've met with him several times in my trips to Sacramento, and so we're looking forward to Anthony Reardon's success in the Assembly and how he can help leverage issues here in our city. And recently, our intergovernmental community relations group, that's Vice Mayor Alejo Cervantes, as well as former Mayor Bilicich, and I met with the school district personnel, and we discussed updates at PV High School and some of the traffic issues that we all experience in that vicinity. We also talked about trails and bikeways and improved access. We reviewed the helmet and skateboard and bicycle transport in the city and how that can be improved as well. And we also talked about the process of closure of Lincoln Street and how that impacts the public. And lastly, or close to last, I wanted to point out that the city employees had their service awards this last weekend, and it was really, really well attended. There were almost 150 employees there, and many of them received outstanding awards, and a number of retirees that have years and years of dedicated experience. It's like kind of like a big family, and like any family, there's always going to be some kind of disputes or difficulties in working through issues, but you know, the employees have done an outstanding job. And I just wanted to call attention to 30-year employee Kara Kowalling and Mike Wolf, 30 years as a customer service manager, Robert Steelman, 35 years as an integrated waste supervisor, Daryl Flanagan, retiree from the fire department, along with Fernando Tapiz, and from the parks, Ernesto Contreras, police, Brad Chagon, and Manny Solano, and a whole host of public works employees that have been with us for a long, long time, and many other people were recognized there as well. And so I wanted to thank the employees and recognize their hard work here at the city. And as been alluded to before, you know, there's always difficulties in town. There's always hard feelings that somebody has for one reason or another, but we need to work together and we need to work forward, and we need to remember our motto on the wall, opportunity through diversity and unity through cooperation. And so I ask the public, as well as the council members and all the staff, to focus on that unity through cooperation and recognize that there is diversity, and we need to honor and respect that. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure, I just wanted to discuss a little bit. I had the opportunity to participate at the WELL Water Conference. So it's the Water Education for Latino Leaders Water Conference that took place in the city of San Jose, brought together leaders from throughout the state of California that represent communities that are over 50% Latino. I had the opportunity and privilege to sit on a panel to discuss the AB 685, which was a past legislation and resolution calling for water to be considered a human right and access to clean drinking water to be a human right available to all. And part of the conversation was discussing about how can the state actually put some teeth to that resolution and prioritize funding for water projects that do in fact actually result in full access for communities that are small, older, and poorer communities to have access to clean drinking water. So it was really about making sure that the vision and the value for access to clean drinking water for all is matched with practical policy solutions as well. I was also happy to support the Watsonville High School students in their annual Highlight to the Future conference. I was their keynote speaker, speaking to both students and parents about the importance of college, but also using college and your education in service of others. And I did want to talk about the Crossroads Shopping Center. Like many of my colleagues, we all have the opportunity to support our small business owners in multiple ways. And I was happy to initiate the letter and some of the conversation in that way, but I definitely recognize there's many ways to be involved and many ways to be supportive of our small business owners. And ultimately, it's about the positive outcome. All we were able to achieve there was some temporary relief for our business owners. I know that we had support out of Sacramento, touching base with government relations of Kaiser, both at the Sacramento level and also at the local regional level. So I think that all of those efforts led to some of what we were able to achieve, which was allowing a little bit more time and some financial support for our small business owners devastated by the news that they would be displaced. Long road ahead, a lot of work. People still need support and help finding new places in town to relocate to. And I think definitely our city staff, Kurt Overmeyer, was part of having that conversation with Kaiser. I wanted to just end with announcing, today would have been little Jalen Zavala's 6th birthday. And we have a number of organizations, the Watsonville Police Assistance Fund, Omega Nu, Alpha Theta Watsonville, of course the Fish House, and West Coast Soul, coming together in celebration of her life. The Fish House will be accepting reservations from 11:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Lunch and dinner, you can call 831-728-333. All proceeds, 10% of proceeds raised on that day, Saturday, March 12th, will go to benefit local charities that work to increase public safety in our community for all of our children.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So, I attended a lot of things that some of the council members mentioned, the chamber lunch and the Watsonville Relay for Life kickoff event, the Zone 7 Finance Committee meeting, and got the opportunity to talk to a lot of elementary school kids, third graders here from Lynn Scott. That was entertaining on both parts, I think. I attended the Ella's at the airport 1-year anniversary. And of course, attended the employees awards dinner, which is always one of my favorite things to attend. To support the employees that we have. They are the backbone of our community and our city, so it's really important. I got the opportunity to attend the Power Valley Arts Council exhibit, immigration. Great exhibit that they had on immigration from different facets of life, whether it's Russian, Japanese, Latino. It was really long 2 weeks, actually. So that was kind of some of the things that did happen. I wanted to announce something that we're putting together, too. It's calling it a cash mob at the crossroads. Cash mob is sort of like a flash mob, but people show up with money and they spend at a certain location. So some of these businesses are closing down. We're having a big sort of shopping spree there, kind of provide like a Black Friday for them, even though it's Thursday, right? Where they, make a lot of profits that day. So that's happening on Thursday, March 10th, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. They're going to have all their items reduced from 20 to 45%. We're continuing rain or shine. It's supposed to rain, so it's. You can find the details there on Facebook under the Cash Mob at Crossroads Watsonville. And, I love this little quote. When we each do a little, we all do a lot. So please attend this Thursday, 4 to 8, Cash Mob at the Crossroads, 4 to 8 this Thursday. Thank you. Did another 2 minutes. Next, we have the consent agenda, item 5. All items appearing on the consent agenda are recommended actions which are considered to be routine and will be acted upon in one consensus motion. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Any action from the council?
I'll move that we pass the consent agenda.
Moved and seconded by Lowell and Trina.
Just a quick comment, if I might, Mayor.
Yes.
I'm certainly going to support the consent agenda, But I did have some questions regarding item D. That's the 17 residential parcels located on Allen Way. You know, I looked at that extensively, and I thought, well, we're doing something special for these folks up in Corralitos and providing them some water access that we talked about the importance of water and how it is a right and how everybody should have good, clean water. And they have some difficulties with their wells. But at first, I saw all those horse pastures and large homes and pools and such, and I thought, well, maybe this is, not such a good idea. But it was explained to me by Public Works that they are paying their fair share and more because they're outside of the city limits. And I sometimes think that, we're kind of isolated here within the city limits, but at the same time, our community spreads out from La Selva Beach to Corralitos, and folks over in Monterey County think that they're part of the community too, and we welcome them. And so initially, I didn't think that that was such a good idea, but after it was explained to me that it'll be water conserving, and they'll be under some of our regulations rather than just out on their own, I'll be glad to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We can take roll call.
Villasich,
Yes.
Cervantes Alejo,
Yes.
Kaufman Gomez,
Yes.
Dutra,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes. Next, we have item 7, public hearings, ordinance, and appeals, consideration of loan harmonization of schedules, interfund loan, and transfer policy and long-term interfund loans. It's come to my attention that, go ahead.
Mayor, Council, at this point in time, I am requesting that this be pulled from the agenda and brought forward at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just would like to add that we are removing this item from the agenda at this point upon the request of the Pilots Association attorneys. So it will be brought forward at a later date. Just wanted to add. Thank you.
So they're okay with February 23rd?
We're adding that to a later date. We estimate in a couple of weeks, but
You're waiting for a date.
Mayor, Council, it'll give me an opportunity and staff to kind of sit down with the Pilot Association one more time. Once we do that, then we'll bring this item back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask another question on that? Are we still waiting for FAA before we?
no, we're not waiting for the FAA at this point. But it's just this item is just being removed because of this request by the Pilots Association attorneys. So we are doing accordingly, and then we will meet with them in a short period of time. And we anticipate that we'll bring this item to you within the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the successor agency for the former redevelopment agency meeting, item 8, new business, issuance of refunding bonds to the successor agency to the redevelopment agency of the city of Watsonville for purpose of refinancing certain outstanding tax allocation bonds issued by the redevelopment agency of the city of Watsonville.
That's a mouthful. So
Yeah,
good,
it
good
was.
evening, good evening, council members, members of the public, staff members. As indicated, we are bringing before you an item for reconsideration to refund outstanding bonds of the former redevelopment agency. And refunding really means in simpler terms, just like you are refinancing your home or any type of other loan. But that's the term that I use for bonds refunding. So these slides were prepared by Stephen Gortler. He's our financial advisor, and he's in the audience to answer any questions that you may have. We also have in the audience a representative from our bond counsel, Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood. If you have any questions also that pertain to the legal aspect of this transaction. But I think it's a straightforward transaction. I doubt that there'll be too many questions. But with that, we move on to the staff recommendation. The recommendation is to approve a resolution of the successor agency approving the issuance of refunding bonds that approves all the documents that are in front of you as part of that resolution, the indenture of trust, the bond purchase contract, refunding instructions, preliminary official statement, and then a final official statement. So all the documents that are mentioned in the resolution are part of your packet. You received that as of last Thursday, I believe, along with your packet. And just as a part of an introduction, in 2004, the former development agency issued some bonds, approximately $26 million in total. Some of them were taxable or non-taxable bonds, but a total of about $26 million. And of that, there's approximately $17 million that are outstanding, and that's the dollar amount that we are proposing to be refunded. By doing this refunding, we will be generating significant savings for all the taxing entities in the redevelopment area, and also for the city as well. And you'll see those savings in some of the the slides that will come next. And why are we choosing to do the refunding at this point? As you can see from this slide, the interest rates have decreased significantly since 2013 to where we are now. They have reached a low point sometime in January of 2016, and they're beginning to slowly go up over the last couple of months, but these prices change constantly. So the interest rate that we will likely pay for these bonds will be something similar to what you see here, but of course the interest rate will not be defined until the bonds are funded. But this is just give you a very good picture on why this makes sense at this point to be doing this refunding. So what I just said on the previous slide is, in essence, we will anticipate that the interest rate will be approximately 3%, the true net interest rate. And right now the interest rate is over 5% in general for all the different bonds, even though it varies by different issues. And by doing this, we anticipate that we'll have approximately $3.7 million in savings, or $240,000 per year savings until the bonds are fully paid off. So, but the actual amount will not be determined until the bonds are funded. That will be sometime in around the beginning of May 4th. So on this next slide, you could see the specific savings on an annual basis. As I mentioned before, it's about $240,000 per year, with an approximate savings of about 17% over the life of these bonds, which will end sometime in 2033. And of those savings, what percentage will come to the City of Watsonville General Fund? Approximately $50,000 or so per year. The County of Santa Cruz will also generate some savings, and also some special districts will generate savings as well as the schools will generate the most of the savings. And you could see that that's the distribution on this chart. Out of the 3.7, approximately 2.5 will go to the schools and other districts, and the City of Watsonville will get about $800,000 over the life of the bonds. So how will the bonds, the sources of funds, how are we gonna actually fund this refunding of bonds? There's an estimate that the par amount will be about $14.2 million. The total sources, or the money that we'll get from these issues, will be about $17.5 million. And how they will be used, about $17.1 will be used for calling the old issuance of bonds and refunding them. And then about $400,000 will be spent on various costs for issuance of the bonds. So the financing team that we have put together, along with the main driver behind this, with the financial advisor Stephen Gortler, is in front of your screen. You can see the bond council, as I mentioned before. We have a representative here, Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood. And you have all these different participants that will be helping us accomplish the refunding of the bonds sometime in early May. So with the help of this financing team, we will be able to, right now, the estimated schedule is that we will be closing the bonds, refunding by May 4th. And with that, the recommendation again before you, it is that you approve a resolution which authorizes the refunding of the bonds with all the documents that are in front of you on the screen and that were attached to your packet as indicated here. So if you have any questions about this item, please, this is the time to ask.
Sorry. Any city council questions? Councilmember Tuna Kaufman-Gomez.
Thank you. So essentially what we're telling the public is it's basically a refinance that we're doing, which, by the way, I'm impressed that your turn time on that refi on this is pretty close to what a mortgage refi would be. So that's a good thing. And now, of course, that means we're starting ground zero again for that 1 year. And you're saying 2034 If we stayed on course with what we currently have, what would be the final date on the bonds that we have if nothing were to be done?
The date will be the same. We're not refinancing the term. All we're doing is
Cram
changing
down.
yeah, correct.
Cool. And then obviously it benefits the school as well, so I'm sure that they're very impressed that we're actually thinking about doing this, since they're the benefactors more than we are actually. But are we like the policyholders in terms of implementing this, since the facilitator of doing the paperwork process kind of thing?
Correct. These bonds were issued under the authority of the redevelopment law. Since redevelopment went away and the city chose to become the successor agency, the city became the entity that holds these obligations. So by you approving this, now the next step will be to take it to the oversight board, where some of these districts will be represented. That will be presented to them tomorrow, assuming that you approve this tonight. And then it will be sent to the State Department of Finance, who will still have to approve the bonds. And then if everything falls into place, then we will have the funding done by around May 4th.
And so we're looking at $250,000 that we're receiving, because I saw $54,000, but you're saying $250,000 annually. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on the differences. The city's receiving annually
about $52,000 for the city. About $250,000 for all the different entities combined, including the school districts. Correct.
So of the $50,000 that we're saving by redoing this, is this going to general fund? Is this going to back to redevelopment on some of the projects?
General fund. So we will see some of the savings as these are the percentage that the general fund will receive.
Okay. And let's see here. Again, the benefits of the schools, the close of escrow. We're looking at the same finish date, which is good. And then, of course, the administrative expenses, which was $600,000 for us to really put this and redo this.
$400,000. It's just,
Okay,
in
400.
general, all the refunding cost, yes.
Which is a broker fee of a percentage of the overall bond? Is that essentially?
It is the fees that we have to pay for the bond counsel, financial advisor, and all the different members of the team that you saw on this slide. So
And-
they'll have to do a lot of work to make sure that those ones are refunded.
A lot of hard work out there.
Yes.
And this is off the top. It isn't just out of our share of what this is for.
It will be paid out of the bond proceeds, so the new loan amount, in essence, you were looking at a loan for a mortgage, will pay for that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on that question, I see that these other agencies have some share in the savings, the schools, the County of Santa Cruz, and the special districts. Do they, since they're going to save some money in the benefits of this, do they pay any of the costs?
The cost will be paid directly by the bond refunding itself. So even though they get some of the benefit, all the costs will go through the successor agency. But by sharing in on the cost of the refunding itself, I guess you could say that they are sharing in on the cost because they are as members of the oversight board, they're the ones who will give us the authorization to go ahead and send this off to the Department of Finance. So they are contributing somehow by also being part of this oversight board as well.
So you anticipate that they'll endorse this concept and that they'll like it?
I believe they will because they'll see some savings directly coming in to their organizations, yes.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, one last question. You know, I get calls from bond salesmen periodically, and as the interest rate goes up and down, and it's always on their timeline, and this is the time to do it, and boy, you're really dumb not to do it right now. How did we land on Hilltop as opposed to some other group?
So what we did is we did an RFP for an underwriter. We had different people contacting us at different times throughout the year. So the first thing I did an informal request for proposals from the financial advisors. Then our financial advisor helped us do an RFP also to select the underwriter, which in essence is the one that will be getting the bonds and helping us sell them in the market. So we did an RFP as well of a handful or four of those such firms, and then we selected Hilltop based on competitive pricing and the overall quality of the services that they will provide for the refunding of the bonds. So part of the reason why we are able to meet this aggressive timeline, as you indicated before, is because we have selected a team that we know will be able to deliver, that has experience in these areas, and that gave us the best price given this service that we will receive from them.
Thank you very much. I know what to tell those other guys now when they call me.
Thank you. Send them my way, yes.
No more council questions? Seeing none, we will go to public comment, public input.
Mayor, can we ask for the firm if there's any comments that they'd like to make of this? If there are no public questions?
Would they like to?
Happy to be a part of the financing.
Come to the podium if you will, please.
Happy to be a part of the financing, and think it's a really good deal for the city and should generate good savings. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Clarify one point. You mentioned the schools will be a beneficiary. The way the law works, the schools will in fact receive a substantial portion of the savings. However, the way the state funding works for education is that the state funds education to a revenue limit, $1 per pupil amount. And so every dollar that the schools get from this savings is going to, by and large, result in $1 less that they'll get from the state, from the Prop 98 allocation of state funding. Now, that's not true for the city or the county or the special districts, but for schools and for community colleges that are governed by the state laws, it's a little bit of, give with one hand and then we take with the other hand. When redevelopment was dissolved, the dissolution back in 2011, they set up these rules, and that's one of the rules. So the savings will go to the schools, but then the state will actually sort of be the beneficiary, but then those extra monies that the state now has will be available for all school districts, so it'll increase the size of the pie a little bit, but not dollar for dollar for each individual district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll bring it back to council discussion or proper motion.
This isn't one that we vote on, is there?
Oh, it's not? Yeah, we vote on a resolution approving the issuance. Councilmember Hurst?
Well, I'll move the resolution for discussion purposes.
And I'll second that motion.
Do we have discussion?
I'll have some discussion.
Okay.
Thank you for doing this. When I first came on council, especially having a bit of the financial background here, one of my first questions was, is there a possibility of us doing a debt consolidation, some sort of a reduction so that we can benefit from the saving of what the interest rates have been doing? And I'm glad to see that we're moving forward with being able to have some savings to our general fund by looking at this. And I'm hoping that we anticipate seeing if there's any other debt obligations that we can consider doing this as well with.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Hurst?
Well, I'm certainly glad to see that we're moving forward with saving money and cutting cost. And so this is encouraging. That's certainly the right direction. And thank you very much, Council, for telling us about the school funding situation, because I'm sure the schools will be a little disappointed to hear that they're being given something on one hand and taken away with another, but they're probably used to that as well. And that was why redevelopment was kind of important, and they needed to watch it as it evolved, and there was a role for them to play as well, because they have a financial stake in this. And so I'm glad to move forward on this issue.
Thank you. Seeing no more discussion, if we can have a roll call.
Villasich?
Yes.
Cervantes Alejo? Yes. Kaufman Gomez?
Yes.
Dutra?
Yes.
Hurst?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes. Next, we'll move on to item 9, reports and presentations. Item A, aggressive solicitation panhandling ordinance status report. If we can have a staff presentation.
While he's coming up, I want to let the public know that sandbags are available on 2nd Street if anybody feels the need. I know that we're going to be having more rain, and that way they know that that resource is available from the city if they need any more sandbags as a result of our weather conditions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, and community. Buenas noches. I am Jorge Zamora with Watsonville Police, and I'm bringing the solicitation update from quite some time ago. So back in March of 2015, the City Council raised some concerns that there was an increase of aggressive solicitation from individuals for money, food, cigarettes throughout the city. And we brought this to the Planning Commission back in March of 2015 and eventually brought it to the council on in April. The municipal code was approved back then with the provision that the police report back the results of this action. So that's what I'm here to do tonight. So it's important to identify what solicitation and manner of solicitation means as it relates to this section. So I'll just read it off the screen. So solicitation shall mean any verbal request or any nonverbal request made with a sign by a person seeking immediate donation of money, food, cigarettes, or items of value. Purchase of any item for an amount far exceeding its value under circumstances where a reasonable person would understand that the purchase is in substance a donation for the purposes of this chapter. So the manner of solicitation. Any person who solicits in any of the following manner is guilty of an infraction. It is determined by the police officer that an infraction of this chapter has occurred. The officer has a choice of providing a warning, providing a resource card, or issuing a citation. And if you recall, the last time that we presented, there was conversation about what is aggressive. And I think the section, or that these subsections kind of encompasses what that aggression essentially is. And one, it's by coming within 3 feet of the person that's solicited until that person has indicated that he or she wishes to make a donation, or by blocking the path of the person or the pedestrian along the sidewalk on the street. By following a person who walks away from the solicitor, by using abusive language as part of the solicitation, or following the refusal that is directed at the specific individual or individuals being solicited. By soliciting in a group of 2 or more persons while under the influence of alcohol or any illegal narcotic, controlled substance, or by soliciting while in the immediate possession of a dog by a leash or otherwise. So what I have here is, I'll direct you to this section up here, and it's a 5-year comparison of calls for service. And if you take note, the calls for service went down. So last year, we had 98 calls for service, and it went down, I believe, to 73 calls for service for, for 2014, it was 98, and for 2015, it went down to 73 calls for service. So the decrease of these calls could be due to the fact that panhandling has become an everyday issue and folks have become numb to it and just are not calling anymore, or it may be linked to the manner in which police have decided to address this issue. And if you recall, part of what we wanted to do with this section is not just have it be a hammer for punishment for folks, but as we also wanted it to be something where we could curb offensive behavior, illegal behavior, while at the same time providing assistive resources to the individual, if in fact that's what they needed. We did print out a resource card that officers were using to hand out to these individuals while they were out on patrol. I actually brought some of those cards with me. And they've actually proven to be pretty effective. The if you look at this section here, where it says calls for service reported, you'll see that for last year, there were 73 calls for service that were called in to the police department where we responded. Most of our busiest times were Wednesdays and Saturdays. And for the bottom section down here, you'll see the months of the year. And our busiest times during last year were February, July, and November. And these 3 months resulted for 36% of all the panhandling calls for that year. And for last year, the police department did not issue any citations for aggressive panhandling. What we did do is we issued a lot of those cards that are in front of you. So after we left the meeting and the section was approved, part of my purpose was to go back to the roll calls and talk about what our mission was. And our mission, again, was not to cite people specifically, but it was to educate, as well as if we needed to cite individuals who were being aggressive or just not being, you're just not following in compliance with what needed to be done, then of course we would issue a citation. This slide up here illustrates the areas of the city that are busiest with solicitation. And this is where the calls for service are mostly happening. So you'll look at down here, this is the downtown area. And up on this side is sort of the Target shopping center, Crossroads. And up on this side, of the north end of the city, is Safeway. So that's essentially where most of these calls are coming in. Actually, all of the calls for last year, that's where they came in. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you for the presentation. Is there any council questions? Councilmember Trina Coffin-Gomez?
Yes, thank you for letting us know the locations. And it's very interesting to see that it's Wednesdays, which I'd have no random reason why Wednesday would sort of peak up in there. Is there anything associated with some of the panhandling around like the bus depots in terms of they're waiting for the bus and while they're there they're doing this? Or is this just strictly the car in the driveway, not anywhere closely related to any of the bus stop situations?
Sure. I think it's a combination of things. I don't think it's just one particular location. Like say, shopping centers more than bus stations. I haven't broken down the numbers in that fashion. But I think traditionally, bus stations, shopping centers are areas where folks would usually panhandle.
And the reception, when you've provided them with this information, what kind of feedback have you had from the residents that have been served this card of information?
It's usually pretty positive. I think folks are a little surprised by it. I think some people are expecting an actual citation, and we're not, or we didn't do that last year.
And do we know any of the agencies that they've been referred to from this information that have said yes, somebody got a card because they were panhandling, received a card, and they decided to come? Or is there any feedback from any of the social service agencies that they're being referred to?
No, so I haven't received, or we haven't kept track of what agencies they're actually going to. What I do know is that last year, one agency, I don't remember if it was another city department or a community-based organization that wanted to essentially cut and paste our information onto a different flyer. So I thought that was positive.
Good. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
On your calls for service, did you make the distinction between those calls that would classify them as aggressive solicitation versus just calls because there was panhandling activities going on? Was that distinction made?
No, it was not. This was strictly just panhandling.
Okay. So the only way that we would see that kind of distinction was if some kind of citation was given?
It was the manner in which the call was dispatched or coded out, and the way that we track these particular calls were just for panhandling. So it wasn't separated into aggressive or panhandling, say under the influence of narcotics. It was just kind of like a broad panhandling.
Broad category, okay. So what other sort of laws are on the book? Because I think that a little bit of the concern with this was, why have a specific category for aggressive solicitation when there's already legal recourse for community members that might feel threatened by any person, regardless of their status, whether they're homeless or whether they're just another citizen in our community. So I think that that's a little bit of the concern, and if we're not collecting the kind of data that'll show us what's the frequency of aggressive solicitation, it would seem that this policy may not be necessary.
Sure. Yeah, and I can totally see and understand that point. I think for us as a law enforcement agency, there is a penal code section 647C, which it's a very broad section, and to my understanding, it's been litigated in court, and it doesn't hold much standing. And for us, it really delays a process, right? And it's an involved process that usually doesn't get us to the results that we want, which is compliance. And it's a very drawn out process where we have to submit reports, say, to the DA's office. There's also a vehicle code section, but that vehicle code section is very specific to what the individual is doing at the time. Say if someone's standing in the middle of the street or on an island, right? It's very specific. So it doesn't allow us to deal with some of those issues that usually come up. Say somebody, for example, might be panhandling on private property, say, a private business. The vehicle code doesn't allow us to effectively deal with that individual if that's the case. So those are some of the issues that we run into, which kind of set us back sometimes.
So is some of the gray in the policies we did have in place to deal with some of these circumstances that might arise?
Right.
Okay.
Councilmember Belisich.
I just wanted to thank you for your approach, because I think these cards are beneficial. I think it's a very positive way to approach people and try and work with people. My question is, with all the people that you worked with, you didn't cite anyone, right?
Not for 2015, no.
Okay. And so did we have any repeat offenders?
That's a good question. And I think when I was looking at this and I was looking at the data, I thought we really cited no one, right? Which was a good thing. But I think from what I recall, there was one individual who actually left me a voicemail and said that he had been cited. And I think that was prior to, it wasn't during the January 2015 to December 2015 information gap that I was looking at, right? So I think that individual was a repeat
Offender.
Offender. But but again, I only remember one, and that was off the top of my head.
I do like the fact that the police department's being proactive. You put together resources for people. You're handing them out. You're trying to help the people. But if there were repeat offenders, I would think there might be some consequences. But if we didn't have any, then we didn't have any, and that's even better.
Right, and I think we were trying to be very deliberate about how we carried this out. Mm-hmm. And we understand that this is an issue that kind of impacts that impacts everyone, and it's so it has to be dealt with in a very delicate way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councilmember Dutra?
Thank you. If I remember correctly, the reason why we did this was because of the private property issue that we couldn't really deal with the panhandling on private property. So let's say the Target Shopping Center, it really restricted what you guys could do on that property. I just want to clarify that.
Yes, that was one of the issues that we ran into, where a private property owner didn't necessarily want to come forward and press charges, right? So we were really left with more of a, hey, don't come back type of intervention. So
Right.
the property owner was afraid of
Retaliation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate all you've done. This is in my district. If you saw where all the the issues are, it's right there, bordering with the mayors as well. And I know I've been working with the city manager on this issue because this is the number one problem that I get emails from all the time, and it even goes on to even the drug abuse that's going on. Women are afraid to. Century 21 called me. The women don't want to go into work without having men there. We're just dealing with a big issue in that area. So I appreciate all that you guys are doing to try to curb that. And I've also had a lot of thank yous too, because if you're a woman, you're by yourself, and someone comes pounding on your window, it could be a little bit scary, and that does happen. So I do like the fact that you now have the authority to address that issue before you didn't because of the private property issue. So thank you. And when you give these cards out, do you let them know that they don't have to be drug or sober anymore to go to some of these because I think that they did drop those restrictions, if I'm correct, for these places. I know a lot of people were, afraid to. They were under the influence, so they wouldn't show up. But I think as long as you're not harming yourself or someone else, you are allowed to go to one of these services. So.
Yeah. So our message is essentially, if you need the services, go.
Right.
And then whatever agency they end up showing up at, then they can make
Right.
that.
We've made it very easy
that
for
determination.
people. So thank you.
Councilmember Hurst?
Could we go back to the definition again, the text about what's not allowed? And let me say this about the card. I'm not sure everybody has as good a vision plan as I do, but the print's pretty small. So I'm not sure what kind of reaction you do get or don't get when these cards get passed out. And do we know how many cards have been passed out?
Sure. So I believe we printed 500 to 800, I believe. Yeah, I think that's pretty close. And just to kind of give you a gauge of where we're at with this, the cards that you have up there with you were the last ones I could find at the police department today. So I'm sure some officers have them in their pockets, but those were the last ones. So it took me some time to actually find them. So I think we ordered about 500 to 800 cards.
Well, it sounds like we can declare victory and move on in this case. Not. No, I do see panhandlers, and occasionally we see some aggressive panhandlers. Somebody with a dog is not allowed, right?
Right.
But you can panhandle without a dog, but not aggressively.
It depends on what they're doing.
Well, what does it depend upon what they're doing?
So again, I'll refer you to the manner in which the solicitation occurs, and because we realize that just calling something aggressive, as you had pointed out last time, there was a lot of confusion with that. So I think the subsections that were outlined is kind of encapsulates what we wanted to be able to work with. Does that make sense?
Sure. Tell me about the use of children in solicitation. I occasionally see children kind of used as a bait or shield, saying, feed my baby, bring me some food, give me some money. Do we refer people to Child Protective Services, or has Child Protective Services been involved in any of these cases? Because I have seen this repeatedly with the use of children.
Sure, and I've seen those too. I don't know if Child Protective Services has actually been involved in some of these cases. I know that when our officers respond to these types of individuals who have children, part of what we mainly want to do is take the children's health and their best interest is paramount, right? And in most cases, the children are safe and they do have food. But it's on a case-by-case basis, and the officer at the scene is going to assess that. And if there is a need to, say, just give someone a resource card, then that's what we do. If we need to move further and investigate what else is happening and CPS needs to be involved, then we'll go ahead and do that, as well as file charges if it does reach to that point. But I have not seen a case like that so far.
Thank you. I think the public is disturbed by just the sight of panhandlers sometimes, and whether they're aggressive or not. If they're on a traffic island, there is a traffic hazard there, and I assume that they're removed as soon as someone calls in. But the guy on the sidewalk with his dog or a sign or his bicycle or just taking donations, you know, I think the public doesn't like to see it, but yet they don't really feel like it's a law enforcement issue, and they're kind of reluctant to call it in too, because they don't want to bother the police with small change, if you will. So, you know, it's uncomfortable for the public to see, yet they don't want to make it a law enforcement issue, is what I've observed. Do you concur on that in any way?
So I think
obviously you get some calls.
Yes, we do get some calls, and I wouldn't say that or I would encourage folks to really shift their frame of thought if they're thinking that they're disturbing the police department, because they're not. And I also strongly believe that whatever social issue we're dealing with is not independent of itself, and it's not. I think it takes a collective effort to really deal with this stuff, not just the police department. But the police department is part of the solution. So we do need to be involved to whatever capacity that we can.
Well, I'm glad you're looking at the big picture of this, because it really is all connected, and it is unfortunate that we have so many folks that are really down and out and don't have a whole lot of resources and kind of rely upon handouts to get by. And so it's a kind of reflection on our social conditions and society in general that this situation exists.
Any other council questions before we bring it out to the public? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, this is an informational item only, no action required. That concludes this item. Moving on to B, economic development presentation. Another no action required. If we can have a staff presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. My name is Kurt Overmeyer with the Community Development Department, and the Finance Director, Ezekiel Vega, will be assisting me in this. And I'm here today to talk to you about economic development and everything that we do in Watsonville in that regard. And so I want to start off by answering the question that you hear all the time: what is economic development? And the short answer is it is using public investment to spur private investment. And we do that in a number of ways. The biggest way is business retention. We also work on business expansion, and that's when you help a business that is in expansion mode find a new place, find the real estate they need, find resources that they need. Economic gardening, which is helping entrepreneurs to be able to take the next steps, helping them find the financing that they need, helping them find business advisors, all of that sort of thing. And then business attraction, and business attraction is exactly what it sounds. It's going out and finding businesses that to come to Watsonville.
I guess the microphone is off. Nice on. So how does that relate to all of this? It relates to revenue. In essence, every time that there's an economic development within the city, that means that revenue is going to come in, and it's going to help some of the services that the citizens of Watsonville are accustomed to receiving. And the majority of that revenue goes into property tax, sales tax, and TOT or other type of revenues, depending on the type of economic development that occurs. But as you can see from this chart, and I think that you probably are familiar with something similar to this that you have seen on budget presentations, is that the major revenue sources for the city and the general fund are property tax and sales tax. Of course, you see that big pie area that says fees, but of course that has to do with a lot of different fees for services provided by the city. But the ones that coming from this type of development are property tax and sales tax, and in some instances, hotel tax, which is also known as TOT, transient occupancy tax. And I think, as you can see, the sliver of 2% for the city of Watsonville, when we had seen comparison of per capita revenues for the city against Monterrey, Santa Cruz, other places, this is the glaring deficiency in the city, where we have a really small percentage of revenues, about $800,000 per year, compared to what some of these other cities get. So it is important always when economic development happens, look at what type of good financial impact this could have in the city. And these are the major ones that could be impacted again: property tax, sales tax, and TOT tax.
Thank you. So we hear a lot of times some things that sort of are mythology about Watsonville. One of the things that you hear a lot is that there are a lot of vacant buildings in Watsonville. Well, there is one big glaring vacant building where Gottschalk's used to be downtown, but the reality is our industrial vacancy rate is almost zero. And I had a meeting earlier this week with a business that's coming in. It's a business that already exists in town that needs to expand, and they're going to build out our last available industrial parcel of land that's not already spoken for, that's not part of Manabiao. We also hear a lot that, why doesn't the city bring in this business or that business? And typically when it comes, and these are almost always retail businesses, when it comes to retail, the city doesn't choose what retailers come here. The retailers choose where they go based on where their customers are. And then last, why doesn't the city fix this or that building before letting a new business build elsewhere? And the reason almost 100% of the time is because the property owners made a decision that they're going to do what they're doing with their property and not something different. However, there's also a matter of fit. A lot of times a new business won't fit where people imagine that it might. And so when you hear those questions come up, they're often based on some information that's probably faulty. So retail attraction, I want to talk about that a little bit. Like I said before, retailers find their customers and they move to areas where they have customers that fit their needs. And retailers, especially national retailers, are very sophisticated in how they make those determinations. And they use all sorts of metrics. They use demographics. They look at educational attainment. They look at what they call psychographics, which is much more detailed. And then even if you fit all of those things and there's not a space that has the right configuration, where it's not in the right neighborhood, where it's not the right sense of place, or doesn't have the right parking, then that retailer's not going to go there. And also, if the retailer has 10 sites to look at and, the site in Watsonville is the 5th or 6th site, they're going to build the other sites first if they can, because they're going to make more money at those other sites. We do have some targets for business attraction. One of the big ones is lifestyle manufacturing, and we have a great big lifestyle manufacturer in town that everybody knows about, Fox Racing. But we also have 15 or 20 more small businesses that do very similar types of manufacturing. They use CNC, which is a computer numeric controlled milling. They they're maybe involved in ATVs or motorcycles or bicycles in some way or another. And most of those businesses are growing, so we want to support that sector and also try to bring in more businesses, because obviously these businesses that are doing well are able to find the right workforce and to find the employees that they need. We also have a lot of natural foods and supplement companies. Obviously, the big one of those is Nordic Naturals. Well, in 2000, Nordic Naturals had 7 employees. Now they have over 250 and want to grow more in Watsonville. We also look a lot for companies that do agricultural sales, marketing, back office, and food science and plant science. So, obviously Driscoll's is the great big one of those, but we also have Superior Foods and Monterey Mushrooms and a number of other companies in that same kind of space. One of those companies that grew so big that they got bought out by General Mills started here with 10 employees 7 years ago, and now they've grown up so big that they had to move out because there wasn't a space that fit them. And then, of course, we also look at high-value food processing, and this is a lot of the reason why we have the food incubator over on Riverside. And then last but not least, and of course very important, retail, hotel, and restaurant are all things we're always looking for, and we do a lot to try to attract those kinds of businesses into town. So we have a lot of great new opportunities. Of course, Manabiao is now available, and it's an actual business park, which is very exciting. Thanks to FedEx building their very large facility there and the amount of money that was going to take, it made the ratio of infrastructure costs to building costs be close enough that the Owls were able to move forward and build out all the infrastructure for the whole business park. We also have 4 proposed hotels in various stages of approval. Obviously, we talked earlier about how TOT generation is very important, and those hotels are important to generate that TOT, and we have a market that's kind of clamoring for more hotel rooms. We have some new retail opportunities that have come in. We know that Tractor Supply just opened up, and we have others that are looking, and we're trying to find them the right kind of space. But throughout all of this, one thing that is going to have to be required is that we're going to have to do infill. And what infill is building where there's already been a building or already been a structure or is an existing building. And because of our political limits and geographical limits and kind of being stuck at our 6.5 square miles and being, in almost every conceivable way out of industrial properties, we're going to have to start looking at other ways that we can accommodate new growth. And infill is probably the best one that we have. So I want to talk about the hotels that have been proposed, and I want to make sure that this is really clear as I go through this, because it could be a little confusing. So right now, we generate just under $800,000 a year in TOT tax. With the hotel that's farthest along, they're actually working on getting their building permits, the technology, 375 Technology Hotel. That just under $800,000 will go up to just a little bit more than $1 million. If we had just the one that's being proposed at One Western, that would go up to a little bit more than with just the Technology Hotel. So the One Western Hotel is a little bit bigger than the Technology. Now, each of these is just one hotel at a time. It's not cumulative. So if we look at Lee Road with the 2 hotels, that gets us up to $1.4 million in TOT. And if you look at all 4 hotels, and this is the only cumulative one, you get to just under $2 million in TOT generated. So that's a pretty big change in how much revenue that we get, and that's an annual revenue. And I also wanted to show you what it did to the share of revenue that went to TOT. Right now, it's the graph won't show you exactly the percentage, but it's just under 2%. And all 4 hotels, it would be just over 7%. We've had a lot of recent projects, and just kind of go through some of these. FedEx is a huge one. We also recruited into an existing building, Agron Biofuels, and they're up and under production and producing about 200,000 gallons of biodiesel a week. AutoZone is brand new. Tractor Supply is brand new. Fatima Fine Jewelry just opened up. Salud just opened up a new medical clinic on Beach, or is it on Lake? We have some new medical offices. Merino Fuels just did a major upgrade. Lakeside Organic has proposed and working on getting a new cooler, a new office, and some new dry storage space. La Rosa Tortillas has come in. They have some permits, but they're planning on building on their vacant land between Annie Glass and Elixir. Sunshine Gardens, a 89 unit. It's actually going to end up being 87 unit, but an 87 unit multifamily and single family housing project. The new McDonald's, we have 35 Harkins Slough, the Marin Townhomes, Blanca Townhomes, Everett Circle, Pippin Lane, a whole bunch of new, and Hanson Apartments, a whole bunch of new housing. We were successful in recruiting an EB5 regional center. Up until 2 years ago, there was what EB5 is a program that allows foreign investors to make direct capital injections in the United States in exchange for a visa. Well, you can do that as a single investor where there's no regional center, but if there's a regional center, you can do it and by aggregating investments. We didn't have that in Santa Cruz and Monterey County, and the city of Watsonville and some folks that are in that EB5 space worked together, and we were able to bring that into town. And they're already making an investment that's north of $20 million in Watsonville. The Fairfield Inn, the La Quinta, the Hampton, and the Extended Stay America are all proposed. So depending on which of those that we get or how many of those we get, that's going to make a big dent in Watsonville in terms of our hotels. So we have some hurdles. Our general plan, as we all know, was sued by the Pilots Association, and we're operating under an old general plan that doesn't allow us the flexibility that the new one allows. We have some hard growth limits between LAFCO and the county and some other things. We're kind of stuck at the 6.5 square miles. We've gone through about a 45-year period of disinvestment from our downtown. I would like to make some changes there to allow some investment to occur. And that downtown is got some beautiful buildings, but it's still lacking a sense of place. Industrial space is almost completely full, and honestly, I think that everything that's marketed right now has a letter of intent or is out for lease negotiations for every single industrial space that we have that's built out. And then because we have this problem with industrial space, retaining our expanding businesses is going to be increasingly difficult. And last but not least, of course, we need to start thinking about how we can do infill. And with that, I would be very happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any city Councilmember Trina Kaufman Gomez.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about the $20 million from the EBS fund?
The EB5 fund?
The EB5.
Yeah, so the Sunshine Gardens project is their seed capital has all come from EB5 investment. So their construction capital, which is about half of the final value of the property, has all come from EB5 investment.
And that's a $20 million, or are there other projects?
That's the $20 million, and they're looking at least 2 other projects in Watsonville and have some land tied up and are doing some other things to do that.
Now, can we take a look back at the pie chart of the tax breakdown? Okay, so on this one here, the revenues before, after, let's say we'll take the after. The 22% is your, let's go with 22% is the sales tax. The magnitude, I know that there are small businesses, but there should be some effect that the small businesses tax, the retail tax is going away by bringing in the medical complex of the Kaiser. How does that affect our taxes?
It's a pretty small amount for those businesses compared to the overall sales tax picture, but we definitely want to preserve as many of those businesses as possible and have been working with them throughout this week to do exactly that.
Yeah, because that is a question that does come up, is that we're bringing medical in, which is not generally generating a sales tax revenue. And so the displacement of the businesses, we need to find somewhere for them to go so we can continue to maintain what tax revenue they are generating for the city. And I know it's a small scale, but there's still some impact on this. So I'd like to make sure that we're well focused to help them in any way. Thank you.
Councilmember Dutra.
what are your conversations that you have in regard to the Gottschalk's building? I mean, are you working with the owner? To me, I just feel like there's no effort being put into that at all. I mean, it's been vacant for how many years?
Understand where you're coming from, but we've worked very closely with the owner. The owner got pretty far along in a lease about 4 years ago and dropped out. But whenever we're working on a real estate negotiation, all of the details of that are confidential and we can't talk about them publicly. I'd be happy to fill you in privately, but we can't talk about them publicly.
Mayor, Councilmember Dutra, if I may. I've met with Mr. Hansen a couple of times over the last few months, and we've talked a little bit about the Gottschalk building, and kind of what he's also said to me is he needs the driver downtown. He needs more numbers, more cars downtown in order to get some of these higher-end things that people want in the downtown area. So looking at this La Quinta Hotel is one of those things that's going to bring the traffic and the numbers of downtown. So I know that is one of his concerns because it's such a large building, and he wants to make sure that it goes for a good use and a good purpose.
Well, go ahead. It's been empty for a long time. So I listen, excuses for how many years? It's been 12 years. We can continue having excuses for the next 5, 6. The building's going to be empty. I think you made a comment. You said businesses need to want to come here. And that's just not how business works. We have to go out and we need to go out and persuade them to come here. And if we have the mentality of, oh, businesses need to want to come here, they're not going to come here. I mean, there's no reason for them to. Now, if you look like the Al family, they have this property. They're very aggressive about what they did. They're good business people. They don't want their property empty. They went out and they hustled, and they made sure FedEx was coming, to fill that property. We need to have that same mentality in our department. We need to be hustlers. We need to go out there and work hard to get businesses to come here. Give them a reason to come here. If we're going to sit back and just wait for businesses to need to want to come here, they're not going to. So I feel a little bit disappointed.
We are very aggressive about going out and finding businesses and have done a lot of work in that regard. I mean, if you'd like, I can go over everything that we've done. It's a lot.
The list you gave me when I got sworn in over a year ago is the same list that we've been working with to today. So there hasn't been much change. And we need to be proactive. We need to be out there selling our community. Listen, I grew up here. This used to be a flourishing community. We had major businesses here in Watsonville on a retail level. Since 1989, we have not been able to really, get back on our feet. But we need to be working hard, and we need to give people a reason to come back. There's no reason why our community can't be back to what it was. And so, I think that maybe it's a culture in our city that we just kind of sit back and be like, oh, we need to want them to come here. I think that there needs to be more attention, and I think we need to maybe look at how some of the bigger businesses do it. I mean, Gottschalk's has been empty for many, many years. To me, at this point, it's just excuses. So, and I'm probably will be here a year later from now saying the same exact thing.
If there's any other questions, please keep them as questions. This is a no action required.
Okay, what are we going to do to bring in new businesses? What can you do differently?
Well, we know what businesses fit our population and our trade areas. We go to ICSE in San Diego every year. Charles is going to ICSE and Las Vegas here, and I'm not sure, it's in May, right? The Recon?
Yes, it is. It's the first week of May.
Which is the International Council of Shopping Centers. All the retailers are there, all the brokers are there, all the developers are there. We very aggressively set up meetings with all of them. All of those that are good targets, we work very closely with them to try to find them a location that works for them. We did that with Tractor Supply. They were someone that we worked with at ICSE, and they looked at 6 locations in town, eventually landed on the location that they're at now, and that's how they got there. But again, the retailers will go where they have customers. It's not about whether they want to or not. It's about where they're going to make money. And the best thing that we can do to build retailers, like Charles said, is to bring the other things that attract the retailers, which is rooftops, people that are living there, people with income, people with disposable income. Hotels work really well because tourists spend money. So all of those things are things that will help us get those businesses and that we're working on.
That concludes the questions. Councilmember Hurst?
I don't know if you have a slide on this or if you can tell us about the tax split and how property tax goes to schools and county, and what's left over the city gets to have.
Sure, I can talk about it. I don't have a slide on that, but the way property taxes are figured is they are figured as 1% of the assessed value of the property, and that's a cap that's set by Prop 13, and you can't go past that cap unless you have a special district like a Melrose or something like that. Then you can go past the cap. In most of the districts in Watsonville, those taxes, of that 1%, the city gets 17%, the county gets 17%, and the other taxing entities, mostly the schools, but the other taxing entities get the remainder of that 1% of the assessed valuation. To complicate matters further, Prop 13 sets a cap on how much you can reassess property for. It's not based on the market, it's based on a maximum of 2% a year of increase in value. If the properties drop below their current assessed value, the assessor has to assess them all the way back down to where they were, and then they can go back up until they hit that old cap plus 2%. But as we all know, real estate values in California have gone up at a much faster pace than 2%. So property tax is always an eroding part of our tax base. With sales tax, we get 1% of the base sales tax plus our special districts. And TOT, we get 10% of every room night.
So in regards to property taxes, is it fair to say that if people's property were valued more, or if they improved their property, that the economy would get better?
Absolutely. Economic activity begets economic activity. That's sort of a basic fundamental law of economies.
Do you think this law is well known in the public?
I can't answer that.
Let me ask you a couple other questions about the public, because I know you get a lot of questions, and I do too, and maybe you have to repeat the answers more than once. You know, a lot of people say, hey, there's a lot of empty stores and empty buildings in town. What are you doing to fill them up? How come they're not full? And I think you said something about that before, but there again, some of these things have to be repeated.
Yeah, there's a number of factors that lead into that. We have some space that's obsolete. We have some space that is in trade areas that struggle. We have space that's in trade areas where everybody wants to be, like, near Target. Everyone wants to be there, and that property is nearly full. Our retail vacancy rate is really not abnormal retail vacancy rate. The last report that the big company that does it, they used to be called Cassidy Turley, but now they're TBZ. Their last report showed us at a 4.8% retail vacancy rate. The national average is a little over 5%. So we have an okay retail vacancy rate. Our office is a little soft. We're at about 5.5% on office. I'd like to see that get a lot better. Our industrial vacancy rate's absurdly low.
You know, there's some other public comments that I'm sure you hear once in a while, and one of them goes like this. There's really nothing for me to buy in town, so why should I shop in town? Why don't you have something in town that I want to buy, and then I'll shop in town?
Well,
say to that.
We have a lot of people that shop here. I think our downtown absolutely lacks a sense of place and could have some better stores in our downtown. However, it's not up to the city to do what the private sector is supposed to do. And it will require that some of the property owners downtown make some investments in their properties. And the good news is, and I think this is really, really very good news, is several of the property owners that have properties that struggle have recently said, hey, okay, now's the time I'm going to start making those investments in my property. And hopefully we'll start to see that over the next couple of years.
Well, I think those answers need to reverberate in the community a little bit more, and we should flesh them out a little bit more. Maybe there's a need for some kind of commentary or news announcement or flyer of all the recent projects and how the tax split works and what people could do in the community to help stimulate the economy rather than shop out of town or let their properties run down. Let me ask the last question, from me at least, is this part about how we're kind of stuck at 6.5 square miles. Well, what's up with that?
Well, as I think we're all aware, there's a large and somewhat cumbersome process that comes with annexing land in California, and Santa Cruz County tends to be one of the most difficult places to do that. Where we've tried to annex land in the past, it has been very difficult, and even some of the land that was added with Measure U has subsequently been taken off the table. And we know that it's very difficult to do that. And as a result, at least from my point of view, the recommendation would be to really focus on infill and to fill in those gaps, to maybe remove some obsolete buildings and try to get them replaced with other things. But yeah, it's just hard to annex any land in Santa Cruz County.
Well, I think these are all rhetorical questions that need to be repeated and answered throughout the community, because they keep coming up. And maybe people don't like the answer. Maybe there's a different way to phrase the answer, or different questions that need to be asked. But I think we need to do some kind of informational outreach, because we keep hearing these same questions over and over, and we're just not getting the kind of, the public's not absorbing what's been said.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I really enjoyed seeing your first slide with the definition that talked about economic development, and that being public investment. That's what we have jurisdiction over, to spur private investment. And I just wanted to talk about some of the ways the city has been a part of using some of our public dollars for that public investment. And I know that the downtown conversations, I recognize, Gottschalk's is a big sort of question mark, and people are constantly always asking. And, it came up again when the businesses over at Crossroads Shopping Center were facing that eviction. They said, why not relocate them all to the downtown Gottschalk's building? But if you could just sort of talk about that public-private partnership, that those private property owners negotiate their contracts with the tenants, and we're not necessarily involved with that part of it. And then the other piece that I'd like you to talk about is the community development block grants that we have available that provide options for private property owners, especially in our downtown, that they can apply for low interest rate loans to make some of those facade improvements that would potentially drive up the cost of property and bring in perhaps higher end tenants within that.
Absolutely. So that public-private partnership, the public investment that spurs private investment, there's a lot of different things that fall into that. We've built a pretty extensive fiber optic network that has helped a number of businesses that needed, better telecommunications capability. We're working on the downtown plan, which is going to make our downtown more walkable and easier for customers to get from where they park to their destination, and really to make downtown more of a destination and to have a sense of place. We also have had various programs throughout the years. We had a loan guarantee program until the state came and took our redevelopment money that was pretty effective. It guaranteed a small part of loans to businesses that made it a little easier for a couple of banks to underwrite their loans to businesses that they would normally say no to. And just being able to help a business access funds is helpful to allowing them to succeed. Obviously, the city builds all of the roads. We build all of the sewers. We build all of the water systems that serve all of our community, and making sure that we have the adequate amount of that is important to getting the right kinds of businesses and the right kinds of development. You're aware that Manabia was a very difficult property to develop. It had $2.5 million of base infrastructure costs against the 130,000 square feet that they could develop before they triggered building all of those infrastructure costs. Well, the city worked very hard with the Yao family and with FedEx to bring FedEx here so that we had a big enough user to come in so that we could actually build out that infrastructure. And then we also have, as you said, the Community Development Block Grant Program. One of the things that we use our Community Development Block Grant Program for is to fund a facade improvement program that's available in downtown first, but can extend past downtown. And what that program does is allows a property owner to get a loan that's forgivable as long as they meet some criteria to build and improve a facade. And the more money of their own money that they spend, the more money that they have available to them. That goes up to a maximum of $30,000 per facade, per storefront that we can give to a business or to a property owner to get that done. Honestly, it hasn't been the most popular program, partly because all of the property owners that were willing to do facade improvements did them within the last 10 years with the help of that program. So there's a 10-year limit. If you didn't do it, if you did it in less than 10 years, you have to wait until you've gone through 10 years to apply again. And the other reason is we have in California a law that requires that any construction project that's financed even with $1 of public money, that it triggers prevailing wage, which can add, depending on the kind of construction it is, up to 20% to the costs. So if we're not able to contribute at least 20%, it's usually a loss or a wash for someone to take our money.
And then the estimated TOT that you're projecting here, if all goes well and we're able to have these 4 hotels up and running, what's sort of the timeline to start to see that kind of annual revenue?
Well, part of it, the timeline we don't control, so please accept that caveat up front. But the hotels at Lee Road are pretty difficult construction type, so I expect that those from the day they apply for building permits till the day they open will be between 14 and 18 months. The other 2 hotels are much easier to build, and I think that we're talking a 12 to 14 month timeline from when they're fully permitted. And of course, the 375 Technology property is very close. They are almost ready to pull building permits and move forward. So that one will be, of all the 3, the ones that's most likely to go quickly.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bilicic.
I just want to know that when you report the demographics and you start talking to these businesses, do you talk about the demographics of the surrounding area?
Well, absolutely.
Outside the city limits?
Absolutely. However, all of the national tenants have defined trade areas that they have standards within. To give you an example, In-N-Out, who we've been chasing after, I called In-N-Out's corporate office the first Monday of every month for 6 years in a row before they finally got the Seaside store approved. And they told us if they got the Seaside store approved, not talk to them for 5 years, because that's kind of what their expansion plans were.
Saying what? That if they went to Seaside, they would not come here?
That there would be at least 5 years before they'd consider Watsonville again. But they were out. They looked at the locations that we had. They were definitely interested. But In-N-Out looks at how many cars there are on the highway. They look at the median income. They look at the disposable income. They want a 5-minute trade area that has at least 65,000 people in it, and they want a minimum educational attainment level. Now we were close to meeting all of their criteria. And they were close to making a decision in the affirmative because they really wanted to be on the Central Coast. However, they were more interested in being right in the middle of a populated area rather than on the edge of a populated area. So that's, there's a lot of details that go into recruiting retail. But we know what those businesses want. We've done a lot of research so that we know what the businesses want. We've done a lot of research so that we know how we match up with them and what things matter to them. And when we go to them, we present them a custom proposal that says, hey, this is what we're going to bring to the table. This is why we think we're a good fit for you. And we sit down and meet with them. And, sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not. But we did this with Grociella. We did it with Tractor Supply. We did it with several other of the smaller businesses that you see around town. So, it is a successful effort. It's just we don't always meet all of the criteria, and there are a lot of criteria that go into those decisions at a corporate level. And honestly, several times we've been at their real estate committee when the decision was made not to go forward. I mean, Smart and Final was going to occupy a space downtown, and unfortunately, they fired the real estate crew right before they moved in, and we lost out on that because their new real estate crew saw it a little bit differently than their old crew did.
Well, I know with In-N-Out, everybody talks about that all the time, and that's, In-N-Out's choice whether they come or don't come. But, I mean, if you look at logistics, I think there are plenty of people that would support In-N-Out if it came here. You hear people all the time talking about it. It'd be the only one in the county. But my point being that we've talked about the Gottschalk's building, and that obviously is up to the owner to decide. But when things are presented by the city, do they look at the outlying businesses that are here? There are a lot of things outside the city limits. I'm not saying that we're a poor community. We are in part, but there are other parts of our community too. And people have talked about having a retail store downtown for a long time. I think that they would support it. They supported the former Gottschalk's. They've supported before that. And yet, somehow we can't get anyone to come here. Why is that?
Oh, I think there's several things playing into that. And to answer your question, we absolutely, with Gottschalk's, our targets were based on a 30-minute drive time. That trade area looks really, really good, and looks really, really good for most large retailers' profiles. However, for the past 7 or 8 years, with a couple of exceptions, all of those large retailers have been companies that are shrinking. You probably read that just recently Walmart Express, which was one of the targets that we had, they backed away from 238 stores that they're closing this year. JCPenney's closed 117 stores last year, and they're going to close more this year. Sears is closing almost all of their stores.
Kmart.
And Kmart as well, and that's the same company. So
Macy's. I mean, they've all downsized.
Right, and what that means is that business model, that big department store business model, is a struggling business model, and I think that's the primary reason that we haven't been able to get somebody in there. And we met with the representative of the property owner just recently, and he's considering some things that he hadn't considered in the past, like reconfiguring the structure or splitting it up and doing some other things. So we're much more hopeful than we have been that we're going to be able to respond and get something that really fits quickly.
I just want to be sure that when we present our community, we also present the outlying shoppers that are going to Santa Cruz, Gilroy, Salinas. They're going out because there's nothing here downtown. There isn't a big department store. I mean, people shop at Kmart, Target, Ross. I mean, there's not much else.
Agreed, and we do know, every dollar that leaks from our community, we know how much that is and where it's going, and that helps us identify our targets. We know one example, we know that we leak a pretty large chunk of sporting goods every year. So whenever we start retail recruitment and work on retail recruitment, one of our focuses is finding a sporting goods store that fits that profile for those kinds of sales that are leaking and trying to bring them into town. So we're always talking to folks like that as just an example. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. We're very well aware. We know what we're leaking, and we know why and where to. So we're trying whatever we can to fill in those gaps.
But even though we talk about educational attainment, I mean, you talked about that for In-N-Out. But even a department store, people have to buy clothes. People have to buy things. They still have money.
Agreed, and it just boils down to where that company can make the most money, and sometimes it's us, and sometimes it isn't. And we know who we fit with, and we try to find them, and we try to get them here. Sometimes we have the right spot, sometimes we have the right deal for them, but not always.
Thank you.
So, what was the TOT percent that cities get again?
Cities get 10% of every room night.
10% of every room. So hypothetically, if I were to stay, like, let's say at the hypothetical Hampton Inn that's mentioned there, for three days at $150 per day or $450, how much TOT would the city get from my 3-night stay at a total of $450?
$45.
$45 in 3 days, just for one room. Most Hampton Inns, how many rooms do they have?
Hampton Inn usually is between 80 and 100.
80 and 100. So if we had 100 rooms, that's 45, just for a weekend stay, we can get 45 per room.
Right.
Wow, that's really good. With the, with the rooms that we have, one day I would like to see a multi-use sports complex in or around the city. And I know that they bring in revenue, but I'm afraid that we don't have the rooms to really make that profitable or as profitable as we can. So, I think that it is important to make sure that we do create the rooms and create the TOT so we can support things like our downtown, so we can support our local restaurants, so we can bring also, I don't want to say, when people say about the tuckerias, but so that we can create a more diverse set of establishments in our town. And that's why I think that these rooms are important to our community, so we can bring some of this diversity into town. But yeah, I would like to see the multi-use sports complex one day.
Mayor, Council, if I may, one of the things that Kurt didn't mention, or Ezekiel, but is also equally important is the TOT is a big deal, but you get additional indirect and residual taxes from retail sales, from a number of other things when these people are in the city, whether they go to restaurants or wherever they go, and that is another portion we can't exactly tie a number to, but it will increase that sales tax back to the city as well. So,
you mentioned that, and I did a tour of the hotels in my district, and I seen some of them at the, it was then the old Red Roof, and they had, apparently there's a big tournament at the Ansoldo Park over there, at the baseball fields, a Little League tournament. And the owner was telling me that they're full of kids, baseball kids, and I seen all the kids running around their baseball uniforms, and they're asking the front desk, where can they go eat? So I stepped in and made a few suggestions to them, but that kind of what you said right now, I've seen that firsthand in the hotel lobby here. So it does reciprocate kind of, the sales tax. People come here, they spend, they go to the Target, they go shopping for different things here, and it kind of creates more sales tax revenue for them just staying here. Not just the TOT, but all the stuff they purchase here. Any other question? Councilmember Hurst?
Just a comment. Hopefully to wrap things up. I think that, it's unfortunate we're missing two council members here, so I think you'll have to repeat yourself on occasion. And I think the public needs to hear the story a few times too, because they're not getting it. We hear these same questions over and over again. We need to have some kind of fact sheet or information sheet that we can penetrate the public with, and then they may understand the issues a little bit better. I think that what the public could do, and I've said this before, is shop locally, improve their property, and support public education. If we had those three things in place in a more vigorous and strong way, we would have a better economy. Now, I know the Great Recession had a significant impact on us, and still does, but if we could focus on improving property, shopping locally, and supporting public education, some of these objections and some of these, and I won't call them excuses, but they're rationales that businesses have and corporations have and tax generators have. If we could overcome some of those obstacles, we'd be in better shape. Am I outlandish there?
Not at all.
Councilmember Trina Kaufman-Gomez?
I certainly believe in an out-of-the-box approach on, it sounds like that there's an obvious cookie cutter checklist that they look for. And we need to find a way to make ourselves unique on why they need to come here and in terms of coming in and investing. I think that I know that the way we've solicited ourselves, we need to change that business model in terms of the solicitation. I think also by showing proof of where our taxes are being spent elsewhere on resources that this community doesn't have would be an asset for a company that has a business such of that says we have the city that needs this resource here. Here's evidence and proof that they go elsewhere for this service, and why it is that we find it's a necessity for you to have an interest in coming in, investing in our community and opening up the doors. And that, I think we need to check into a different argument approach and being able to get these businesses to understand that it isn't just 60,000 people and 6.5 square miles and a $15,000 income, because that's not the whole playbook for everybody that's in this community. And I'd like to see some information brought back to council, perhaps at another time, that goes a little bit further outside of the box on things to be thinking about and how to look and market ourselves.
With that said, is there any public comment?
My name is Michael Dempsey. I live at 73 Anna Street. I've been a resident of Watsonville since 1988. And one of the things I noticed on the previous slide was business retention, and we're losing 7 businesses. Bringing in medical offices. Are they going to perform any medical procedures, or is this just going to be office people coming in?
I believe it's clinics, so they'll do some medical stuff.
They do have, they are getting privileges for the hospital, so there would be procedures that the physicians would have the capability of doing.
And then the other thing is the location. Why would 8 businesses be put out of business to bring in another business when there are lots of businesses, lots of buildings, empty lots? There's a lot 2 blocks from Watsonville Hospital, 16,000 square feet, owned by Bergstrom and Kramer, ready for development. New construction is a lot easier than reconstruction. When you go in and try to remodel, you cause all kinds of problems. That little space over there, the parking lot is not big enough. And I don't understand how this project got past the city council and past the planning department as well. I noticed something else you said about bringing businesses in. They complain about the prevailing wage. Prevailing wage is not the problem. Prevailing wage is set by the unions. It's set by the unions because the unions do construction right the first time. No contractor likes to pay a living wage. This includes union contractors. So unions get together, they build things correctly the first time. So you need to educate the people that you talk to when they claim that prevailing wage is a problem. Prevailing wage benefits the community. Everybody makes a living wage, and unions train people to take over. Every union has an apprenticeship program. You can't say that about a lot of other non-union contractors. So there's a lot that could be done. I've always been an advocate of bringing hotels to Watsonville. I've lived here a long time. And before I lived here, I lived in San Francisco, and I used to visit this area, frequently going to the Monterey Jazz Festival, but staying in Watsonville and then going down to the Jazz Festival. And I've always said this is a beautiful area, the birds, everything, and we could do a lot to bring other businesses here. I do believe that we could. And some of the hotels, we would benefit a lot from that. I noticed you said something about we'd get 10% from every room. I think in Santa Cruz it's only 5%. It's higher than that? Well, that's what I'd like to say. And I'd like to see us do more to try to keep the businesses that are here. And we should be more active in when we bring other businesses here. I think I saw in the paper that the city council said that they're not involved in the day-to-day running of the businesses in our city. And I think that's wrong. You're there to protect us. We elect you to do things that we don't have time to do because we're out busy doing whatever we're doing. And it's your job to meet with these people and explain to them what we need as a people and try to work with them. It's a give and take situation. We can't have everything we want. They can't have everything they want. We have to compromise. And I think if we looked at it in that light and worked on in that situation, we could do a lot more for our little town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, if I may, I'll address one of those comments. I think that the city, we were aware at some point at the end of last year that Kaiser was looking in the area. I think what I want to make sure that the general public knows is that there is no requirement for a property owner to engage the city. There is no requirement for the city to be involved in private partnership, looking at and reviewing leases and negotiating with. The city can't get involved there, and they don't contact us. It is unfortunate, and in talking to Kaiser, I mean, they are glad to come to Watsonville. They're going to make a very large footprint in the community, and it's going to create jobs. They were not aware of the circumstances for what they got into, and they are going well beyond to try and make things right and do the best we can. At the same time, I know Community Development Department and my office and the mayor and every single council member up here has been working with these businesses to find them locations in the city and to do what we can, because we don't want to lose them at all. So I just wanted to clarify that, the city's not always kept in the loop with all these things, and they won't talk to us about it because a lot of it is confidential. So, and they picked that site for a reason. So as we move forward with Kaiser, we will figure out more. But thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item 10, requests for scheduling of future agenda items. Do we have any current requests?
I just want to check on a request because we have a committee to meet that is going to be placed on the agenda, I think, in pretty soon. And I need to make sure that we schedule the committee to meet for the charter item that's going to be placed on this agenda and have enough time to get that taken care of.
Okay, I will contact the city clerk to schedule that, and we'll put several dates forward for not this week, but the following week.
Yeah, this week is over for me at this point.
Yeah. Any other items?
The other item I'd like to just sort of brief about, because it is something that's probably going to be a budget item here, is something that we were discussing about a sesquicentennial, so that we are placing some revenue in or some budget line item for that, and making sure, it may not be a discussion here, but we need to make sure that that's involved before we do anything to approve a budget, and make sure that there's a placement for that.
We will.
Thank you. The next item we have is 11, emergency items added to the agenda. We have none. We have item 12, adjournment.